Just thought that you're about to lead us in prayer. Just going to take a moment of silence. Since management is dead, we need to have just like a moment of silence.
Let's read the obituary.
Here lies management.
Let's just take a moment of silence. That's gold. I love that.
Do you know where management came from? Frederick Taylor. Frederick Taylor was the guy who invented management. And there's a whole thing about how they invented scientific management to create more outputs from, like, they had employees creating widgets. They wanted more widgets, and so they were like, how can we get more widgets from our staff?
R.I.P.
R.I.P. management.
Was that during the industrial age?
Industrial age, because like if you have your staff become specialized, like on a Ford production line, then getting another 5% out of your staff is about like focusing and kind of like incentivizing them. But in the knowledge age, management is like actually a relic from the industrial age still, which is really still the idea of like, I want 5% more from you. But of course, leading knowledge workers and salespeople and people who actually have these different experiences, like that doesn't work, because the difference is not 5%, like we're talking about with Bob. The difference is 5x, especially when people don't feel cared for and like you're investing in them. Like, getting 5% is like irrelevant. If you think about like engineering, part of the world that we came from, the difference between a great engineer and an average engineer is like 10x different, right? I mean, so trying to manage that person to get another 5% from them, like it's kind of even laughable. The difference between a great sales rep and an average sales rep is what, 3x? So like trying to get 5% more, like it's just kind of even a joke, right? So part of how Matt and I came up with this kind of whole different way of thinking was that when we were at PushPay, we hired all of the people from these massive blue collar companies that, the brands that you've heard of, and they came into our little startup and they tried to bring their big company thinking with them, and they tried every single thing that they had learned from their experience. Some of them worked at Microsoft and Google and all these kind of massive brands, and you'd be like, wow, like they must know what they're doing. But when they came to our organization, those things didn't work because they had only learned the playbook from a multinational corporation. And so because A, those people didn't fit in our organization, and B, most of the time we couldn't afford to hire people from big brands anyway, and I'm sure you probably can't afford to compete with Google on salary because who has that kind of money laying around? The result was that we have to develop people from within. And so when I left the company, when you left the company, the people who were in the key seats in the company had never done the job that they were in before they had come to work at our organization. The person who was the president of the whole entire organization used to work at UPS. The person who ran the credit card processing division, which was responsible for billions and billions of dollars a year in credit card payments, had worked as a business analyst. The person who was running sales worked in an Apple store. The person who was the head of operations had never worked in operations before. The person who was leading the whole of the HR team had never been in HR before. You say, well, that sounds like a recipe for disaster. But we grew a company from $300,000 of revenue when we went public to over $100 million about 4 and a bit years later. And we did it with people who had never done their job before. So, I mean, you can't say it doesn't work, because it worked for us, and it worked because we invested in and found people who felt and thought like owners and were invested in the company and wanted to see it succeed. And so we gave them the framework that they needed to succeed, and we let them do a lot of the heavy lifting. We gave them a lot of blunt feedback. We gave them a lot of, when things weren't going well, I mean, they heard about it. So I'm not saying it should be a fluffy, just kind of best efforts kind of thing. No, like results matter. But if you have people who think like owners and who want to grow and develop, giving them a shot, just like your story, is the single best thing that you can do to grow your organization and produce better results.
I think the reason we care about this topic so deeply is because we've lived it. I think at one point we'd batted 0 for 19 on bringing people from the outside with the fancy resumes and actually being successful in the role. And it's like we were talking about earlier, the whole idea of management, of coming in and copy pasting your management playbook, actually was what was least effective. It was the leadership attributes, the style of leadership, the style of coaching that had the biggest impact. When I think about what was the number one trend that I saw across that 5 or 6 years, it was this: healthy leader, healthy team; unhealthy leader, unhealthy team. Every single time we saw that play out. The way that I coach, the way that I give feedback, the type of people that I hire, those were the folks, or that was the type of attributes that made the biggest impact on results. And when folks started to fall back into some of their old traditions or their old styles of ways of leading, of managing, that's when we saw the results start to slip and start to drift again. And then it impacted culture and mission and all the other things that we're talking about. So healthy leader, healthy team; unhealthy leader, unhealthy team. If you work on developing those leadership attributes, especially in your up and coming leaders, that's what's going to have the biggest ROI.
I think really at the core of this new way of thinking is that if we care for our staff and we invest into them and help them achieve what they want to achieve, they will go to bat and help us achieve the business results that we want to achieve. And one of the things that you might be thinking is, well, what if I invest in my best people and they leave? But I would say, what if you don't invest in them and they stay? People want to be trusted, they want to be believed in, and they want to feel like you are giving them an opportunity to develop their skills. And when they do that, and when you give them that trust and you say, I'm going to invest in you and coach you like a player on a football team, they will produce amazing results for you because it's about their career. They care about their own skills more than they care about your business, because their skills are going to go with them to the next job and the job after that. So being given an opportunity to grow and develop by taking on more is really at the heart of people development, which leads to better business results.